You know that moment when you reach for something innocent and your whole world just shifts? That was me last Tuesday, reaching for my phone charger that had somehow ended up tangled in my wife's purse. She was upstairs getting ready for her book club meeting, and I needed to charge my phone before heading to work. My hand brushed against a manila folder that definitely didn't belong in there with her usual collection of receipts, lipstick, and whatever else women carry around. The folder felt substantial, important. The kind of thing you don't just casually stuff in a purse unless you're trying to hide it. I pulled it out and saw my name typed across the top of the first page. Divorce papers. Fully prepared, professionally drafted divorce papers with my signature line highlighted in yellow, just waiting for me to sign my life away. The paperwork was thorough. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. There were asset evaluations, property assessments, even a proposed custody schedule for our finances that heavily favored her. She'd listed our house value about $30,000 under market rate, conveniently forgetting the renovations we'd completed last year. My retirement account was somehow valued at significantly less than I knew it to be. I heard her heels clicking upstairs, getting closer to the staircase. Quickly, I photographed every page with my phone, then slipped the folder back exactly where I found it. My charger was still tangled in the side pocket, giving me perfect cover for why I'd been rummaging through her purse. She appeared at the top of the stairs in that navy dress she wore when she wanted to look authoritative. The one she'd bought specifically for parent-teacher conferences and important meetings. "Did you find your charger?" she asked, her voice carrying that slightly condescending tone she'd been using more frequently lately. "Yeah, just got it." I held up the cord, keeping my expression neutral. "Have fun at book club." She smiled that practiced smile she'd perfected over 15 years of marriage. "We're discussing relationship dynamics tonight. Should be enlightening." The irony hit me, but I just nodded. "I'm sure it will be." After she left, I sat in our kitchen staring at those photos on my phone. Every page told a story of calculated planning and careful manipulation. She'd consulted attorneys, gathered financial documents, even prepared talking points for our eventual conversation. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. This was a strategic operation. The really interesting part was the timeline. Based on the dates on various documents, she'd started this process right around the time she'd begun complaining about my work schedule. All those conversations about us growing apart, about needing space, about how marriage required constant evaluation. She'd been laying groundwork while I thought we were just going through a rough patch. I called my buddy who'd gone through his own divorce 2 years ago. He gave me the name of his attorney, a woman who apparently didn't believe in playing games when it came to protecting her client's interests. The next morning, I took a long lunch and met with this attorney. Her office was downtown, nothing fancy, but she had this direct way of speaking that told me she wouldn't waste my time or my money. I showed her the photos of the divorce papers. "Your wife's attorney did decent work," she said, scanning through the images on my phone. "But there are some interesting assumptions here that work in our favor." She pointed out several areas where my wife had either undervalued assets or made claims that could be easily challenged. The house valuation was laughably low. My retirement account numbers were based on outdated statements. Even more telling, she'd listed several personal items as joint property that I'd actually purchased before our marriage. "She's assuming you'll just sign these without consulting anyone," the attorney explained. "Most people do. They see official papers and think they have to accept whatever's presented to them." We spent an hour going through everything. By the end of our meeting, I had a clear picture of what my wife had planned and what my actual options were. More importantly, I had a strategy. The attorney would prepare a comprehensive response that protected my interests and highlighted the inaccuracies in my wife's filing. But she suggested I wait for my wife to make the first move. "Let her play her hand," she advised. "Let her think she's in control. When someone believes they have all the power, they often reveal more than they intended to." That evening, my wife came home from work acting perfectly normal. She asked about my day, mentioned she needed to stay late tomorrow for a project deadline, even suggested we order takeout from that Thai place we both liked. I watched her performance with new eyes. Every gesture, every casual comment, every affectionate touch felt calculated now. She was an actress playing the role of devoted wife, while secretly planning my exit from her life. "How was book club last night?" I asked over dinner. "Oh, you know how it is. A lot of talk about communication and relationships, whether couples really understand each other." She took a sip of wine. Some of the women shared stories about their husbands. It's amazing how oblivious men can be to what's happening right in front of them. I nearly choked on my pad thai. Really? What kind of stories? Just situations where the wives had to make difficult decisions for the good of everyone involved. Sometimes you have to take charge when someone else won't. She was practically giving me a preview of coming attractions. I just nodded thoughtfully and said, "Sounds like those women had everything figured out." They did. It's refreshing to be around people who understand that sometimes you have to be strategic about important life decisions. That night, as she slept beside me, I realized I was looking at a stranger. The woman I'd married 15 years ago wouldn't have hidden divorce papers in her purse. She wouldn't have spent months secretly planning to dissolve our marriage while pretending everything was fine. But this woman apparently would. The next few days followed the same pattern. She maintained her normal routine while I observed everything with fresh perspective. Her late nights at work became opportunities for attorney meetings. Her girls' nights out were probably strategy sessions with divorced friends. Even her suddenly increased interest in our finances made sense now. She was preparing for war, but she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd underestimated her opponent. The following week, my wife's behavior became even more telling. She started working later, claimed her workload had increased significantly, and began having hushed phone conversations that ended abruptly whenever I entered the room. Meanwhile, I was conducting my own investigation. My attorney had given me a list of documents to gather: bank statements, credit card records, property deeds, insurance policies. Everything we'd need to build an accurate picture of our financial situation. The process revealed some interesting discoveries. For the past 6 months, my wife had been making cash withdrawals from our joint account. Small amounts, never more than $200 at a time, but frequent enough that it added up to over $3,000. Money that had simply vanished without explanation. She'd also opened a credit card in her name that I didn't know about. The statements, which I found buried in her desk drawer, showed regular charges at expensive restaurants, clothing stores, and what appeared to be legal consultation fees. But the most revealing discovery was her browser history on our shared computer. She'd been researching divorce attorneys for months, reading articles about asset protection, and visiting forums where women discuss strategies for maximizing their settlement outcomes. One bookmark particularly caught my attention. A forum post titled, "How to Secure Your Financial Future When Your Husband Controls the Money." The advice was essentially a playbook for what she'd been doing. Make copies of everything, establish independent credit, document any behavior that could be used against him later. Thursday evening, she announced another late night at the office. "Big presentation tomorrow," she explained, kissing my forehead in that patronizing way she'd adopted lately. "Don't wait up." I called my attorney as soon as her car pulled out of the driveway. "Perfect timing," she said. "I've finished reviewing everything you provided. Your wife's attorney made several assumptions that work strongly in your favor." She explained that the divorce papers I'd found were essentially a first draft designed to see if I'd accept their terms without negotiation. The asset valuations were deliberately conservative. The proposed division heavily favored my wife, and several claims about our property were simply incorrect. More importantly, she continued, some of these cash withdrawals and undisclosed credit accounts could be considered dissipation of marital assets. If she's been hiding money or spending jointly owned funds without your knowledge, that strengthens your position considerably. We scheduled a meeting for the following week to finalize my response. But she warned me to maintain my current behavior. Don't change anything yet. Let her think her plan is working. The longer she operates under false assumptions, the stronger our position becomes when we reveal what we actually know. Friday morning brought an interesting development. My wife received a phone call that she took in our bedroom with the door closed. I could hear her voice through the wall, though not the specific words. The tone was tense, frustrated. When she emerged 20 minutes later, she looked rattled. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just work stress. You know how demanding my boss can be." But her boss was a woman named Carol who'd always been reasonable in our previous interactions. This sounded like a different kind of conversation entirely. That weekend, she suggested we have dinner at Romano's, an upscale Italian place we usually reserve for anniversaries and special occasions. "We should spend more quality time together," she said over breadsticks. "I feel like we've been living parallel lives lately." The irony was staggering. Here she was, talking about quality time while divorce papers sat hidden in her purse, probably in the same folder where I'd originally found them. "You're right," I agreed. We should definitely make more effort to connect. She smiled, reaching across the table to squeeze my hand. I'm glad you feel that way. I've been thinking a lot about our future together. Our future together. The woman had professionally prepared divorce documents and was talking about our future together. What kind of thoughts? I asked. Just that maybe we need to evaluate where we are. Make sure we're both happy with the direction our marriage is heading. She was testing the waters, trying to gauge my receptiveness to the idea of marital problems, setting up the narrative that would justify her eventual revelation about wanting a divorce. I think evaluation is always healthy, I said. Important decisions shouldn't be made impulsively. Exactly. When major life changes need to happen, they should be carefully planned and well thought out. She was practically narrating her own strategy. I had to admire the audacity, even while recognizing the manipulation. Sunday afternoon, while she was getting her nails done, I met with my attorney to review the counterproposal we'd developed. The document was thorough and accurate. Property values based on current market assessments, retirement accounts calculated with precise figures, and a division of assets that reflected actual ownership rather than wishful thinking. But the real power was in the details we'd uncovered about her financial behavior. The undisclosed credit card, the mysterious cash withdrawals, the research into asset hiding strategies. Everything documented and ready to present when the time came. When she finally shows you those divorce papers, my attorney explained, act surprised but not devastated. Ask for time to review them with an attorney. She'll expect that. What she won't expect is how prepared we actually are. That evening, my wife was unusually affectionate. She made my favorite dinner, suggested we watch a movie together, even brought up memories from our early dating years. Remember when we first moved in together? She asked, curled up next to me on the couch. Everything felt so full of possibility. I remember. You said you wanted to build something meaningful together. I did. I still do. I just want to make sure we're building the right thing. She was laying groundwork again, establishing the narrative that our marriage had problems that needed addressing, creating the context that would make her divorce request seem reasonable and inevitable. But as I watched her performance, I realized something important. She wasn't just planning to leave me. She was planning to rewrite our entire history to justify her decision. In her version of events, I would become the oblivious husband who'd failed to recognize our marital problems. She would be the thoughtful wife who tried to save our marriage before making the difficult decision to end it. The story she was constructing would paint her as the responsible party and me as someone who'd forced her hand through neglect or inadequacy. Monday morning brought another revelation. I checked our joint checking account online and discovered she'd made another significant withdrawal over the weekend. This time for $500, taken from an ATM across town near her attorney's office. She was funding her divorce with our joint money, paying legal fees to dissolve our marriage using resources we'd built together. When she left for work that morning, she kissed my cheek and said, "I love you. I hope you know that." I almost laughed. She loved me so much she'd secretly retained divorce attorneys and was systematically planning my removal from her life. "I love you too," I replied. "I hope our future is everything you're planning for it to be." She paused at the door, studying my expression for a moment. Then she smiled and said, "I think it will be." As her car disappeared down our street, I realized the game was entering its final phase. She was almost ready to make her move, and when she did, I'd be ready with a response that would show her exactly how much I actually knew about planning for the future. Tuesday evening arrived with all the subtle tension of a storm building on the horizon. My wife came home from work carrying herself differently, more confident, more purposeful. She'd clearly made her decision about timing. "We need to talk," she announced as she set her purse down on the kitchen counter. The same purse that contained those divorce papers, now probably updated and finalized. "Sure. About what?" "About us. About our future. About some decisions that need to be made." She gestured toward the living room like she was directing a business meeting. "Sit down. This is important." I followed her lead, settling into my usual spot on the couch while she remained standing. The power dynamic was deliberate. She wanted to be literally looking down at me during this conversation. "I've been doing a lot of thinking lately," she began, her voice taking on that measured tone she used when she wanted to sound reasonable and mature. "About where we are as a couple, about whether we're both getting what we need from this marriage." I nodded thoughtfully. "Okay, what conclusions have you reached?" The question seemed to catch her off guard. She'd probably expected me to ask what was wrong or try to reassure her about our relationship. Well, I think we both know things haven't been the same between us for a while now. Do we both know that? Because I'd love to hear your perspective on what specifically has changed. Again, not the response she'd rehearsed for. She blinked a few times, recalibrating. You were constantly. We barely spend time together anymore. When we do talk, it feels superficial. We're like roommates, not married partners. Interesting. So the solution you're proposing is what exactly? I think we need to seriously evaluate whether this marriage is working for either of us. Evaluate. That's a very business-like approach to a relationship. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Sometimes you have to be practical about these things. Sometimes being adult about a situation means acknowledging when it isn't serving anyone's best interests. And you've determined that our marriage isn't serving your best interests? Our best interests. Both of us. How thoughtful of you to consider my best interests. Tell me more about what you think would serve me well. The sarcasm was subtle enough that she couldn't call it out directly, but obvious enough that she knew I wasn't buying her concerned wife routine. I think you'd be happier with someone who could give you what you need. Someone who shares your priorities. And you've already figured out what my priorities are and determined that you don't share them? Haven't you? Look at how we live. Look at how we interact. We're going through the motions. I see. So this evaluation you mentioned, is this something we're doing together, or have you already completed your analysis? She sat down across from me, leaning forward with her hands clasped. Her lawyer had probably coached her on body language. Look engaged, look concerned, look like you're trying to work together. I've thought about this extensively. I've considered every angle. I think the honest answer is that we want different things from life. What do I want from life? The question clearly frustrated her. You want someone who'll be satisfied with the way things are. Someone who won't challenge you to grow or change. And what do you want? I want partnership. I want someone who's present, emotionally available, willing to invest in building something meaningful together. The irony was breathtaking. She wanted partnership while secretly planning to dissolve our partnership. She wanted emotional availability while hiding her true intentions. She wanted to build something meaningful while systematically dismantling what we'd already built. So you're saying I'm not present or emotionally available? Are you? When's the last time we had a real conversation about our hopes for the future? Well, we're having one now. You're telling me about your hopes for a future that apparently doesn't include me. That's not what I'm saying. What are you saying? She stood up again, pacing to the window. I'm saying that maybe we both deserve to be with people who actually want to be with us. And you don't want to be with me? I want to be with someone who wants to be with me. Have I given you some indication that I don't want to be with you? You don't have to say it. It's obvious in how you act, how you prioritize everything else over our relationship. Everything else like what? Work, your friends, your hobbies. Everything comes before us. When did you start feeling this way? It's been building for a long time. Months. Maybe longer. Months. The same time frame she'd been researching divorce attorneys and preparing legal documents. And during these months of feeling disconnected, what efforts did you make to address your concerns? I tried talking to you about divorce, about our problems, about what wasn't working, and my responses were inadequate. Your responses were defensive. You never really heard what I was trying to tell you. What were you trying to tell me? That I was unhappy, that we needed to make changes. Changes like ending our marriage. She turned from the window to face me directly. I think we need to seriously consider whether staying together is the right choice for either of us. So you want a divorce. I want us both to be honest about whether this marriage is meeting our needs. That's not an answer. Do you want a divorce? She sat back down, her expression shifting to something that was probably supposed to look pained, but mostly looked practiced. I think divorce might be the most loving thing we could do for each other. Most loving. Because nothing says love like dissolution of legal partnership. Don't be sarcastic. This is difficult for me too. Is it? You seem remarkably composed for someone who's devastated about ending her 15-year marriage. I've had time to process this emotionally. I've worked through the grief of accepting that sometimes love isn't enough. Worked through the grief. She'd been planning this for months while I thought we were just going through a rough patch. She'd processed the end of our marriage while still sleeping next to me every night, still accepting anniversary gifts, still making plans for holidays together. So you've already moved through all the stages of mourning our relationship while still living in it. I've accepted reality. Your version of reality. The truth about what our marriage has become. And what has it become? Two people who care about each other but aren't right for each other anymore. When were we right for each other? In the beginning. Before we grew in different directions. What direction have you grown in? I've grown into someone who knows what she wants from life. Someone who won't settle for less than she deserves. And what do you deserve? I deserve to be with someone who chooses me every day. Someone who's excited about building a future together. The prepared speech was impressive. She'd clearly rehearsed these talking points, probably with her attorney or divorced friends. Every phrase designed to sound reasonable while positioning her as the victim of my inadequacy. So you've made your decision. I think we both know this is the right choice. We both know. You keep speaking for both of us. But since you've already decided, what exactly are you expecting from me in this conversation? I'm expecting you to be mature about this, to recognize that we both deserve better than what we've settled for. Mature, like secretly consulting divorce attorneys while pretending our marriage is salvageable. Her face went very still. What? Nothing. I'm just trying to understand your definition of maturity. I think we should talk to lawyers. Figure out how to do this fairly and amicably. You want me to talk to a lawyer? I think we both should, to protect our interests and make sure everything is handled properly. She wanted me to get legal representation, probably because it would look better if she could claim we'd both been equally prepared for this conversation. It would support her narrative that this was a mutual decision rather than something she'd orchestrated alone. That sounds very practical. I'm glad you're being reasonable about this. Reasonable. After months of deception and manipulation, she wanted me to be reasonable about accepting the end of our marriage on her terms. Oh, I'm going to be very reasonable. In fact, I think you'll be surprised by just how reasonable I can be when I put my mind to it. The next morning, I woke up to find my wife already dressed and ready for work. She moved around our bedroom with the kind of energy people have when they've finally made a difficult decision and feel relieved about it. Coffee's ready downstairs, she said, adjusting her earrings in the mirror. I thought maybe we could talk more tonight. About logistics and timelines. Logistics? Right. Actually, since you brought up talking to lawyers, I took your advice. She paused, her hand halfway to her lipstick. You called someone already? Yesterday, right after our conversation. I figured if you were ready to move forward, I should be equally prepared. That was fast. Well, you made a compelling case for urgency. And you're right. It's better if we're both represented properly. She turned from the mirror, studying my face. What did they say? Interesting things. Turns out there's a lot more involved in divorce proceedings than most people realize. Like what? Financial disclosure requirements, asset documentation, timeline restrictions on major financial decisions. I sat up in bed, watching her expression carefully. Did you know that hiding assets or making significant financial moves without spousal knowledge can complicate the process? I wouldn't know anything about that. No, I didn't think you would. But my attorney was very thorough about explaining how courts view undisclosed credit accounts and unusual cash withdrawals. Her face went completely blank. Cash withdrawals? Small amounts over time. The kind that might not be noticed unless someone was specifically looking for patterns. She set down her lipstick with deliberate care. Are you accusing me of something? I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just sharing what I learned about how divorce courts evaluate financial behavior during separation proceedings. I see. My attorney also mentioned that when one spouse has been planning divorce proceedings without the other's knowledge, it can affect how courts view requests for temporary support or asset division. The color was slowly draining from her face. Planning. Hypothetically speaking, of course. If someone had been consulting attorneys for months while maintaining the pretense of trying to save their marriage, that might be viewed as evidence of bad faith negotiation. She sat down heavily on the edge of our bed. What exactly did you tell your lawyer? The truth. About our conversation last night. About your concerns regarding our marriage. About your suggestion that we both seek legal representation. And what did they say? They said I should document everything carefully. Gather financial records, property information, evidence of any unusual behavior or expenditures. I smiled. They were very thorough about what constitutes proper preparation. Evidence of unusual behavior. Bank records, credit reports, computer browsing history. The kind of comprehensive documentation that helps attorneys understand the full scope of marital assets and how they've been managed. She was staring at me now with an expression I'd never seen before. Confusion mixed with the dawning realization that this conversation wasn't going according to her script. You seem surprised, I continued. Did you think I wouldn't take your advice seriously about getting proper legal representation? No, I didn't expect you to move so quickly. You said maturity meant being practical about these situations. I thought being practical meant understanding exactly where we stand legally and financially before making any major decisions. Where we stand. I got up and walked to my dresser, pulling out my phone. Would you like to see what proper documentation looks like? Her eyes went wide. What do you mean? My attorney was very impressed with the thoroughness of my preparation. Apparently, most people don't come to initial consultations with such comprehensive financial records. I scrolled through the photos on my phone, the ones I'd taken of her divorce papers weeks ago, along with screenshots of bank statements and credit card records. This is what she called a complete financial picture. Joint account statements, individual account disclosures, credit reports, property valuations. I looked up at her. Even draft legal documents that might be relevant to our proceedings. Draft legal documents? Hypothetical paperwork. The kind someone might prepare if they were considering various legal options. Her breathing had become shallow. What are you talking about? I'm talking about being prepared. About not making assumptions. About understanding that when major life decisions need to happen, they should be carefully planned and well thought out. I was using her exact words from our dinner conversation. Isn't that what you said? Where did you get draft legal documents? From someone who apparently believes in very thorough preparation. Someone who understands the importance of having all your options clearly laid out before making major announcements. She stood up abruptly. You went through my things. I found some papers when I was looking for my phone charger. Papers with my name on them. Papers that seemed pretty relevant to our future planning discussions. That was private, was it? Because it seemed like these documents were specifically about our joint future. About decisions that would affect both of us. I set my phone down on the dresser. Decisions that apparently had already been made without any input from me. I was trying to understand our options. Our options. By consulting attorneys and preparing divorce paperwork without mentioning any concerns to me. I needed to know where we stood legally before having difficult conversations. So you spent months researching how to end our marriage while telling me you wanted to work on improving it. I was trying to figure out the best approach. The best approach to what? Divorce proceedings or marriage counseling? Because the documentation suggests you'd already chosen your preferred outcome. She walked to the window, her back to me. You don't understand. Help me understand. Explain how secretly preparing to dissolve our marriage demonstrates your commitment to working through our problems. I needed to be realistic about our situation. Realistic. While opening credit cards I didn't know about and withdrawing cash from our joint accounts to pay attorneys I wasn't supposed to know you'd consulted. She turned around, and I could see tears forming in her eyes. But they looked more like tears of frustration than sadness. This isn't how this was supposed to happen. How is it supposed to happen? You present me with professionally prepared divorce papers, and I just sign them without question. I was trying to protect both of us. Protect us from what? From a messy, contentious divorce. From fighting over money and property. From lawyers who would just make everything worse. So you hired lawyers to make everything better? I hired someone to help me understand our options. And cash withdrawals? Secret credit cards? Undervalued property assessments? Those were also about understanding options. Her tears were flowing now, but her voice was getting sharper. You're twisting everything. I'm not twisting anything. I'm just reading the documentation you prepared. Very thorough documentation, by the way. My attorney was particularly interested in the timeline of your financial activities. Your attorney? The one you suggested I consult. Remember? You said we both needed proper representation to protect our interests? I meant after we'd agreed to move forward. Move forward with what? The divorce papers you'd already had prepared? The asset division you'd already calculated? The timeline you'd already established? Stop it. Stop what? Stop asking questions about decisions that affect my future? Decisions you made without consulting me. Stop making me sound like a criminal. I'm not making you sound like anything. I'm describing behavior that you chose to engage in while telling me you wanted to save our marriage. She sat back down on the bed, putting her head in her hands. This is all wrong. What's wrong? That I discovered your plans before you were ready to reveal them? That I took your advice about getting legal representation seriously? This isn't what I wanted. What did you want? I wanted us to handle this like adults. By adults, you mean you wanted me to accept whatever you decided without questioning your methods or timeline. She looked up at me, and for the first time since I'd known her, she looked completely defeated. I wanted to end this marriage with dignity. Whose dignity? Because secretly planning someone's removal from their own life doesn't seem particularly dignified to me. I never meant for it to happen like this. How did you mean for it to happen? I meant for us to recognize that we both wanted different things and agree to separate amicably, after you'd already prepared all the paperwork and established all the terms. I was trying to make it easier. Easier for who? She didn't answer, but she didn't need to. We both knew the answer. The following days brought swift consequences for my wife's carefully laid plans. What she'd intended as a controlled dissolution became a comprehensive exposure of her deceptive behavior. My attorney moved quickly. Within 48 hours, we'd filed a response that detailed every financial irregularity, every undisclosed account, every cash withdrawal that had been funding her secret divorce preparation. The court was particularly interested in her attempts to undervalue marital assets while simultaneously hiding expenditures. My wife's attorney called for an emergency meeting. Apparently, they hadn't expected such thorough documentation of their client's activities. Your wife's legal counsel wants to renegotiate, my attorney informed me. They're claiming the original filing contained errors that need correction. What kind of errors? The kind that happen when someone assumes their spouse won't investigate their claims. Suddenly our house is worth $30,000 more than they initially stated. Your retirement account has mysteriously gained 20% in value. Amazing how accurate appraisals become when someone's paying attention. My wife came home that evening looking exhausted. Her confident demeanor had been replaced by something approaching panic. We need to talk, she said. About what? About your attorney. About the response they filed. About the accusations you're making. Accusations? I thought I was just documenting facts. You're making me look like a criminal. I'm presenting evidence of financial behavior that occurred during our marriage. Whether that makes you look like anything is entirely dependent on what that behavior actually was. She slumped into a chair. This wasn't supposed to be adversarial. You prepared divorce papers in secret, hired attorneys without my knowledge, and withdrew thousands of dollars from our joint accounts to fund legal proceedings I wasn't supposed to know about. What exactly did you think this would be? I thought we could handle this maturely. Maturely, like adults who communicate honestly about major life decisions. Her phone buzzed with a text message. She glanced at it, and her face went even paler. Who's that? I asked. My attorney. She wants to meet tomorrow morning. Good. Maybe you can explain to her why your financial documentation was so inaccurate. It wasn't inaccurate. It was preliminary. For 9 months. She stood up abruptly. I need to think. About what? About how to fix this. Fix what? The fact that your strategy didn't work, or the fact that I discovered it? About how to salvage some dignity from this situation. That's interesting timing. Suddenly, dignity matters when your plans fall apart. I never wanted to hurt you. You just wanted to end our marriage on terms that heavily favored you while pretending it was a mutual decision. That's not true. Which part? The terms that favored you, or the pretending it was mutual? She didn't answer. Instead, she went upstairs to our bedroom and closed the door. The next morning, I received a call from my attorney. Your wife's counsel wants to withdraw their original filing and start over with accurate financial disclosures. After 9 months of preparation, they want a do-over. Apparently, when someone realizes their opponent has comprehensive documentation of their client's activities, they prefer to renegotiate rather than explain their initial claims to a judge. What does that mean for me? It means your wife's attempt to control the narrative and terms of your divorce has completely backfired. She's now in the position of having to justify months of secretive behavior while you have evidence of every questionable decision she made. And practically speaking, she went from holding all the cards to holding none. Her credibility is compromised. Her financial claims have been exposed as deliberately misleading, and she's facing potential consequences for dissipating marital assets. That evening, my wife returned home with red-rimmed eyes and a manila envelope. I'm withdrawing the divorce petition, she announced. Why? Because this isn't what I wanted. Because I never meant for things to get so complicated. You mean you never meant to get caught? I mean I made mistakes in how I handled this situation. Mistakes like secretly planning to end our marriage. Or mistakes like underestimating my intelligence. Both. She set the envelope on the kitchen counter. I want to try counseling. I want to see if we can work through our problems. After spending 9 months preparing legal documents to dissolve our marriage, people make errors in judgment. People can change their minds when they realize they've been approaching things wrong, or when their strategy fails and they need a new approach. This isn't strategy. This is me recognizing that I handled everything badly. I looked at the envelope containing her withdrawn petition. What exactly are you proposing? That we go to counseling, that we try to rebuild trust, that we see if we can save our marriage. The marriage you spent months secretly planning to end. The marriage I was afraid to fight for. And now I realize that some things are worth fighting for. What changed your mind? She looked directly at me for the first time in days, discovering that I'd married someone smarter than I gave him credit for. I looked at my wife standing in our kitchen, holding the withdrawn divorce petition like it was some kind of peace offering. After everything she'd done, after months of deception and manipulation, she thought counseling would fix what she'd broken. No, I said simply. No. No counseling. No trying to rebuild trust. No pretending that what you did was just an error in judgment. Her face crumpled, but I withdrew the petition. I admitted I was wrong. You withdrew it because your strategy failed, because you got caught, because your attorney told you that your credibility was destroyed and you were facing potential financial consequences. That's not why. Then why? Because I realized I still love you. You loved me 9 months ago when you started planning this. You loved me when you opened secret credit cards. You loved me when you withdrew thousands of dollars to pay attorneys. Your love didn't stop you from doing any of that. I was confused. I was scared about our future. So you decided to control it, to manipulate it, to remove me from it without giving me any voice in the decision. I made mistakes. You made choices. Deliberate, calculated choices over a period of months. This wasn't a mistake. This was a comprehensive plan that only became a mistake when it failed. She set the envelope down and moved toward me. Please, we can fix this. No, we can't. Because the person I married wouldn't have done what you did. The person I married would have talked to me about her concerns, would have suggested counseling before consulting divorce attorneys, would have respected me enough to include me in decisions about our shared future. I am that person. I just lost my way. You didn't lose your way. You chose a different way. And that choice revealed who you actually are underneath the person I thought I knew. I'm still the same woman you married. The woman I married wouldn't have lied to my face for 9 months while secretly planning to destroy our life together. She started crying again, but this time it felt different. Not tears of frustration or manipulation, but genuine grief for what she'd lost. So that's it. You won't even try. I did try. I tried for 15 years to build a marriage with someone I thought was honest. I tried to create a partnership with someone I thought respected me. I tried to love someone I thought loved me back. I do love you. You love the security I provided. You love the lifestyle we built. You love having someone to fall back on when your plans don't work out. But you don't love me enough to include me in major decisions about my own life. That's not true. It's completely true. And your offer to go to counseling now proves it. You're still trying to control the outcome. Still trying to manage the situation. Still believing that if you say the right words or make the right gestures, you can get what you want. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do you want me to do? I want you to accept that some things can't be fixed. Some trust can't be rebuilt. Some relationships don't survive the discovery of who people really are. So you want the divorce? I want honesty. I want dignity. I want to end this marriage knowing that I maintain my self-respect throughout the process. And me? You'll be fine. You're resourceful. You plan ahead. You know how to take care of yourself. I walked to the counter and picked up the envelope containing her withdrawn petition. But we're going to do this right. No more games. No more manipulation. No more attempts to control narratives or outcomes. What does that mean? It means we file new paperwork, accurate paperwork, with honest financial disclosures and fair asset division. It means you stop trying to manage this process and start accepting responsibility for the choices that made it necessary. And if I don't agree, then we go to court and let a judge decide how to handle someone who spent months hiding assets and lying to their spouse about their intentions. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her calculating. Even now, even after everything had fallen apart, she was still trying to figure out how to minimize her losses. You win, she said finally. This isn't about winning. This is about ending something that should have ended 9 months ago when you decided you didn't want to be married anymore. I never said I didn't want to be married. You didn't have to say it. You showed it. Through every choice you made, every secret you kept, every lie you told. You showed me exactly how much our marriage meant to you. She picked up her purse from the counter, the same purse where I'd first discovered her plans. Where are you going? To pack some things. To find somewhere to stay until this is finalized. That's probably wise. She paused at the kitchen doorway. For what it's worth, I really am sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry your plan didn't work. You're sorry you have to face consequences for your choices. I'm sorry I hurt you. No, you're not. If you were sorry about hurting me, you wouldn't have spent 9 months doing it. After she left, I sat in our kitchen surrounded by 15 years of shared life and felt something I hadn't expected. Relief. Not happiness, not satisfaction, but pure relief. The weight of pretending everything was normal while knowing it wasn't. The burden of loving someone who was actively planning to leave me. The exhaustion of maintaining a marriage that had been over for months without my knowledge. All of it was finally finished. My phone buzzed with a text from my attorney. Ready to file accurate paperwork when you are. I typed back. Let's get started. Some stories don't have happy endings, but they can have honest ones. And after months of deception, honesty felt like victory enough.